It was 2 in the morning when she felt someone shake her awake. Before she could speak, a hand covered her mouth. "Don't scream," her husband whispered. She blinked in confusion, thinking it was just a bad dream. But then he pulled her out of bed and dragged her toward the back door. She had no shoes on. Her nightgown brushed against the floor and caught on the wooden step as he pulled her outside into the cold night air. She didn't understand what was happening. The ground felt freezing under her bare feet. Her heart pounded in her chest. He didn't say much, only one strange sentence. "You can't be here when they find out." Find out what? She couldn't speak. Her mind was spinning with fear and questions. They reached the gate at the edge of the backyard. He was moving fast, like he had a plan. His face looked scared but focused, like he had no time to waste. And then it happened. The sound of the doorbell. Ding dong. He froze. His whole body went still. She stopped breathing for a second. The quiet night was suddenly full of tension. He turned his head toward the house, like trying to decide if he should run or go back. She saw real fear in his eyes now. Not fear of her, but of whoever was at the front door. Everything felt wrong. Nothing made sense. Why was he so afraid? Who could be at the door at this hour? Just then, she made a decision. While he was distracted, she pulled away and slipped into the shadows of the bushes. He didn't notice right away. She crouched low, heart racing, trying to stay quiet. From her hiding spot, she looked at the house. The porch light was on. Someone was standing there. Then, cut to 2 days earlier. The house was bright and calm. She was making coffee. He kissed her on the cheek. Everything seemed normal. But now, the reader knows, nothing was. And soon, everything would come crashing down. They lived in a quiet neighborhood in suburban Illinois. Big trees lined the streets. Kids rode bikes in the summer. And everyone knew everyone. To all their neighbors, they were the perfect couple. She was a kind and patient schoolteacher who loved her students. He worked in IT, had a good job, dressed well, and always had a smile ready. Together, they looked happy, like something out of a magazine. People often said, "You two are goals." They hosted barbecues, sent out Christmas cards, and were always polite. But behind their front door, things were not as perfect as they seemed. He controlled the money. She didn't mind at first. He said he was just better at it. "It's just easier if I handle the bills," he told her. She didn't argue. That was her way. She avoided conflict, always thinking things would get better. She told herself he was just organized, not controlling. But over time, little things started to bother her. If she bought a coffee without telling him, he would ask where the money went. If she wanted to spend a weekend with her sister, he'd act hurt and quiet. "Why do you want to leave me alone?" he'd say with a small smile. It didn't feel like love. It felt like guilt, wrapped in a sweet voice. Then she noticed he was working late more often. He'd get calls and step out of the room. Once, she woke up at 2 a.m. and found him whispering on the phone in the bathroom. He said it was a work emergency. She wanted to believe him, but something didn't feel right. One day, her best friend casually mentioned seeing him at a restaurant across town. "He looked nice," she said. "But who was the woman with him?" The words hit like a punch. "What woman?" she asked, trying to stay calm. "Maybe his co-worker," her friend offered, but she could already feel her stomach sinking. That night, she asked him about it. He laughed it off. "A client meeting," he said smoothly. "You know how it is." She nodded. She always nodded. But this time, she didn't forget. She started watching more closely, checking his pockets, looking at his phone when he left it unlocked. There were gaps in his story, messages that didn't make sense, receipts from places they'd never gone together. A pattern was forming, and her perfect marriage was starting to crack. She still smiled in public, still played the good wife, but inside, she was beginning to wonder who she had really married and what else he might be hiding. One morning, she found a small package on the doorstep. It had no name, no return address, just a plain brown box with her name written in shaky handwriting. Her husband was still upstairs, getting ready for work. Something about the package felt strange, so she quickly slipped it into her bag before he could see it. At school, during her lunch break, she locked her classroom door and opened the box. Inside, there was only a USB drive, no note, no explanation. Her hands shook a little as she plugged it into her work computer. She had no idea what she was about to see. The screen lit up with video files, security camera footage. She clicked on the first one. It showed the inside of a living room, not her own. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then, her husband walked into the frame. He smiled, took off his coat, and kissed a woman who wasn't her. They sat on the couch, laughing and drinking wine. She clicked the next video. A different room, a different woman, but the same man, her husband, acting just as loving, just as comfortable. Video after video showed the same pattern. Him, in different homes, with different women, always acting like he belonged there, always pretending to be someone's one and only. Her heart pounded, her chest felt tight, but the final video was the one that made her gasp. It showed a dark basement, cold and bare, with only one light bulb swinging from the ceiling. In the corner of the room was a woman. She was tied to a chair, struggling, her mouth covered with tape. And then once again, her husband appeared, calm, focused. He walked over and whispered something in the woman's ear. The video ended. She sat frozen in her chair, the school noise far away now. Her mind raced with questions. Who had sent her this? Why now? Was the woman in the basement still alive? She pulled the USB out of the computer and slipped it into her pocket, her hands trembling. Whatever this was, it wasn't just about cheating anymore. It was something darker, something dangerous, and she couldn't let him know that she knew. Not yet. She spent the whole day thinking about what to say. The videos on the USB wouldn't leave her mind. Her husband wasn't just cheating, he was hiding something terrifying. The woman in the basement haunted her thoughts. She knew she couldn't pretend anymore. That night, she would confront him. She would demand the truth. When she got home, he was already in the kitchen. He smiled warmly and said, "I made your favorite tonight." He'd never cooked for her like that before. The smell of roasted chicken and garlic filled the air. He kissed her cheek and poured her a glass of wine. "Rough day?" he asked gently. Something felt off. He was too nice, too perfect. It was like he was trying to distract her, to make her forget something. She nodded and played along, forcing a smile. Her heart pounded with anxiety, but she didn't show it. She thought maybe she could wait until after dinner, pick the right moment, show him the USB, watch his reaction, ask about the woman in the basement. But in the rush to change clothes and set the table, she made a mistake. She left the USB drive in her coat pocket. After dinner, she got sleepy fast. He poured her another glass of wine. "You should rest," he said softly, helping her up from the couch. Her eyes felt heavy, too heavy. Something wasn't right. She told herself she was just tired from stress, but deep down, she knew. She woke up to cold air on her face. It was dark outside. Her body felt heavy and slow. Then she realized she wasn't in bed. She was outside. He was dragging her across the backyard, one hand gripping her wrist tightly. She opened her mouth to scream, but his other hand clamped down over her mouth. "Don't scream," he whispered sharply. His voice wasn't kind now. It was low and full of panic. "You can't be here when they find out." Her feet were bare. Her nightgown was soaked from the grass. Her mind tried to catch up. Find out what, she thought. She wanted to fight, but her limbs were still weak. They reached the gate, and then the doorbell rang. He froze. A long, quiet pause. He whispered a curse under his breath. His grip loosened. She held her breath. Who was at the door? Did they know something? And in that still, perfect moment, she knew everything had changed. The doorbell rang, sharp and clear in the quiet night. He froze mid-step, his hand still gripping her arm. His eyes went wide, and under his breath he whispered, "Shit, they're early." She didn't wait. While he was distracted, she pulled away from him with all her strength and ran. Barefoot in her nightgown, she sprinted across the wet grass and threw herself into the bushes at the side of the yard. Branches scratched her arms, and the ground was cold, but she didn't care. She just needed to stay hidden. She crouched low, heart racing so hard she could hear it in her ears. From her spot, she could see the front of the house. The porch light was still on, casting long shadows. Her husband stood frozen by the back gate, still listening. He didn't chase her. He just stood there, like he didn't know what to do anymore. Then the doorbell rang again. He turned slowly and walked toward the house, tense and careful, like he wasn't sure who he was about to meet. A few seconds later, the front door opened. A woman stepped inside. She wore a long trench coat and carried a leather folder. She wasn't the police. There was no uniform. She wasn't a friend either. Her face was calm, serious, and oddly familiar. From the shadows, the wife's breath caught in her throat. She had seen that woman before, not in person, but in one of the videos on the USB. She was the woman from the second house, the one laughing with her husband on the couch, drinking wine like everything was normal. What was she doing here? She watched as her husband let the woman in without a word. He looked nervous, even afraid. He kept glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting someone else to appear. The woman walked into the living room, like she had been there before. The wife stayed hidden, trembling. It was clear now. This visit wasn't a mistake. This woman wasn't lost. She was here on purpose, and she wasn't alone. Something was coming, and whatever it was, her husband knew it too. The next morning, she didn't go to work. She couldn't. Her mind was spinning, and her body still ached from being dragged outside in the middle of the night. But more than anything, she needed answers. She couldn't stop thinking about the woman in the trench coat, the one who entered her home so calmly, like she belonged there. Who was she? Why did her husband let her in without a word? Why did he look scared? So she waited. Around noon, the woman left. She got into a black SUV and drove away like nothing was wrong. The wife grabbed her coat and keys and followed, staying 2 cars behind. The drive took nearly an hour, out past the edges of their town, into a quieter, older suburb 2 towns away. Finally, the woman pulled into a driveway and entered a small brick house with blue shutters. The wife waited across the street, watching from behind the wheel. She couldn't stop shaking. After a while, she worked up the nerve to get out and walk past. From the mailbox, she caught the name, A. Wilson. That night, she did some digging. The woman's full name was Angela Wilson, and she was legally married to her husband. Not a girlfriend, not a fling. A real, documented marriage, complete with a wedding license, joint tax filings, and a shared mortgage. She stared at the screen in shock. Her husband had 2 wives, but it wasn't polygamy, not officially. He had used a different name, different paperwork, a separate identity. It was fraud, deep, careful fraud. And when she dug further, the truth got worse. Angela wasn't the only one. There was another address, another woman, and another. 6 total. 6 women who all believed they were married or nearly married to the same man. Each one had a different story. Some had kids. Some had just bought homes with him. Some had recently caught him acting strange. It was all starting to make sense now. The fake work trips, the weird receipts, the missing weekends. She wasn't the wife of a cheater. She was the wife of a man who had built an entire life, no, 6 lives, out of lies. And one of those lives, she now remembered with a sick feeling, ended in a basement. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about danger. And she knew, with cold certainty, she wasn't the only woman who needed to be warned. She stayed up all night, her laptop glowing in the dark, papers spread across the bed. Her hands were shaking as she flipped through receipts, copied down phone numbers, checked emails she wasn't supposed to see. Each clue led her to another name, another address, another lie. Piece by piece, she built the list. 6 women, all connected to her husband, all believing they were the only one. She looked at the names in disbelief. There was Angela, the woman in the trench coat, then Elise, a nurse in Chicago, then Nora, a single mother from a town just an hour away. Each woman had photos with him, texts, love notes, matching stories. Some had engagement rings. One had a baby. He had built 6 different lives with 6 different women, and somehow kept them all apart. Until now. She stared at the list, her heart pounding. It was time to stop pretending she didn't know what he was. It was time to talk to the others. One by one, she picked up the phone. The first call was terrifying. What would she even say? "Hi, I think we're both married to the same man." But when the woman answered, her voice was warm and confused. The moment she heard his name, there was silence. Then, "Oh my God!" The second woman broke down in tears. The third went quiet, then asked for proof. They all had different reactions: shock, anger, sadness. But all of them said one thing, in almost the exact same words. "He told me he was protecting me." Protecting them from what? None of them knew. He never explained. He just said he had secrets, and that it was all for their safety. He'd say things like, "There are people who'd hurt you if they knew about us," or "You're safer if we stay private." They believed him. So did she, until now. By the end of the day, all 6 women had spoken. Some wanted answers, some wanted revenge. But one thing was clear. They had all been used, lied to, manipulated, and now they were all in danger. She looked at the list one more time. They weren't strangers anymore. They were a team, and they weren't going to let him get away with this. She rented a small meeting room at the back of a local library. It was quiet, private, and far away from where anyone might recognize them. She brought coffee, water, tissues. She didn't know what to expect, but she knew they all needed to see each other face to face. 6 women showed up, each with different stories, but the same broken expression. Some were shaking, one was too angry to sit, another just stared at the floor, arms crossed tightly. They were strangers, yet somehow already connected by pain. She stood up and spoke first. "We all know what he did. He lied to each of us, made us believe we were the only one. But this isn't just cheating. He's dangerous. You saw the video. What he did to that woman in the basement." They all nodded. No one doubted it anymore. That's when one of the women, Lena, raised her hand. She was the quietest of the group, older than the rest. Her voice was calm but steady. "He's done this before," she said. Everyone turned to her. "There was someone before me. Her name was Mallory. I found a letter in one of his drawers years ago, written to her. It sounded like they had a bad breakup, but when I tried to ask him about her, he got furious. Said she moved away, that I should stop bringing it up." She paused. "I looked her up years ago. Nothing. No phone, no social media, no records after 2018. It was like she disappeared." The room fell silent. That was the final push they needed. "We can't go to the police," one of the women said. "We don't have enough proof." "Then we hit him where it hurts," the wife replied. "His money, his job, his secrets." Together they made a plan, not to kill him, not to become like him, but to ruin him, bit by bit. They would freeze his accounts. Elise, the nurse, had access to an old bank statement. Nora, the mother, knew where he kept documents. Angela had access to his second phone. They divided tasks, contacting his employer with anonymous tips, reporting tax fraud to the IRS, feeding his secrets to immigration lawyers, even staging a fake assault allegation, with video to back it up. "He destroyed our lives slowly," the wife said. "So that's exactly how we'll take his apart." And they all agreed. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice, and it had only just begun. They launched the plan on a Monday. By Tuesday, his life had started to fall apart. Angela sent an anonymous package to his employer, a large IT firm, with copies of the fake marriage licenses, conflicting tax filings, and suspicious bank transfers. Within hours, he was called into a meeting. He texted one of the women, confused, saying he was being targeted. He had no idea how deep it went. By Wednesday, his accounts were frozen. Elise, who once shared a joint savings account with him, had flagged several unauthorized transfers through her bank. Combined with tax inconsistencies that Nora submitted to the IRS, it was enough to launch a quiet investigation. ICE was tipped off about the multiple identities and strange documentation. Rumors at work began to spread. He was unraveling. Then came the staged assault. Lena volunteered to be the one to do it. She showed up at a public cafe where she knew he'd be, started a loud argument, and let him grab her arm in frustration. Meanwhile, one of the women recorded everything from a nearby table. The video was sent to his employer and local authorities the next morning, with a written statement from Lena detailing months of emotional abuse. He tried to explain, tried to say it was fake, a setup, but no one believed him. The footage looked too real, the statements too detailed. His past, his lies, his secrets were all catching up. But the final blow came from his wife. She returned to their house when he wasn't home. She knew his schedule well. He was still clinging to his job, his last bit of normalcy. She used her old keys, stepped inside, and went straight to his study. She pulled the USB from her pocket, the same one he had taken from her weeks before, and placed it neatly inside the drawer where he always kept his flash drives. Then she sent a message from an anonymous email to the local police and a major investigative journalist. The subject line was simple: home video, possible evidence of kidnapping. By the time he got home, he was already under watch. Within 48 hours, everything came crashing down. The police arrived. His employer suspended him. The bank froze the rest of his assets. Investigators searched the house and found the USB, exactly where she wanted them to. And when the footage played, the scenes of him laughing with women under different names, followed by that final clip of the woman tied up in the basement, it was over. No one looked at him the same again. He had built a life on control and deception, and now, piece by piece, it was gone. The house was quiet the night he was arrested. Empty, finally. She stood in the living room, the silence around her feeling heavy and strange. No more hiding, no more pretending. The man who had once seemed so perfect was now in custody, his many lives exposed, the truth finally laid bare for the world to see. She should have felt relief, maybe even victory, but all she felt was exhaustion. She sat on the edge of the couch, staring at nothing, the soft ticking of the wall clock the only sound in the room. That's when it happened. The doorbell rang. Her heart jumped. For a moment she feared it might be him. A mistake, a loophole. Maybe he got out. But then she reminded herself, he was gone. Truly gone. She walked to the door and opened it slowly. Standing there was a girl, 16, maybe 17. She had long dark hair, nervous eyes, and a backpack slung over one shoulder. Her voice trembled when she spoke. I think I'm his daughter." The woman blinked, confused. "Who?" The girl swallowed hard. "Him. Jason. Or maybe he went by another name with you. My mum said he disappeared when I was 10, but I saw his picture on the news. I think it's him." The woman stepped back slightly, stunned. The girl looked nothing like her, but there was something in her eyes, something familiar, something real. "Come in," she said gently, her voice softening. The girl hesitated, then nodded and stepped inside. They sat in the kitchen. The girl wrapped her hands around a mug of tea, even though it had gone cold. She told her story slowly. Her mother had never talked much about him. He'd been charming, kind, until he wasn't. Then one day, he vanished. No goodbye, just gone. "I always thought it was something I did," the girl whispered. The woman reached out, touching her hand. "It wasn't." She took a deep breath, and for the first time, told the full story. About the lies, the other women, the USB, the woman in the basement. The girl listened in silence, wide-eyed but calm. "I don't know what that makes me," she said at last. "His daughter? A mistake?" "No," the woman said. "You didn't choose this. He did. And you're not like him." They sat together for a while, neither speaking, just two people, broken in different ways, trying to make sense of it all. And in the quiet, the woman knew, telling the truth wasn't just justice. It was the beginning of healing. Thanks for watching. If this twisted tale of secrets and revenge kept you on edge, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, comment your thoughts, and follow for more dark, addictive stories. Because sometimes the scariest truths are hiding in plain sight, and the next doorbell could be yours.